From the quiet shores of the wise people of the water, where the rivers keep their secrets and the mountains stand guard. This is the High Strangeness Sleep Society, a gathering for sleepless dreamers, wanderers of the night and seekers of the strange. Here in the stillness of the late hours, we trace the lines between myth and memory, between the world you know and the one just beyond it. So settle in, breathe deep, and let the night unfold. Most mysteries ask us to look upward, to the stars, to strange lights in the sky, to distant worlds beyond our own. Tonight's mystery asks us to look the other way, downward. Beneath the forests and the mountains and the sleeping cities, there is another country, miles of stone, rivers that have never seen the sun, chambers no lantern has ever reached. For as long as people have told stories, some of those stories have said the dark down there is not empty. In the 1940s, a man named Richard Shaver said those stories were true. Stand at the mouth of a cave for a moment before any of this begins. Cool air is moving up out of it against your face, steady as breath. A little light reaches in past the entrance and then gives up. Water drips somewhere you cannot see, and the sound comes back changed, rounded as though the dark had a shape. Most people standing there feel the same two things at once, a small fear, and under it stronger, something that is almost the opposite of fear. The wish to go in. People have been answering that wish for a very long time. In the cave of Chauvet in southern France, someone walked nearly a quarter of a mile into total darkness by torchlight and painted lions and bears and rhinoceroses on the walls. That was 36,000 years ago. The footprints of a child are still pressed into the floor of one of those caves beside the prints of a wolf, and no one can say whether they were made together or 10,000 years apart. Whoever those people were, they did not stay near the entrance where it was safe. They went down into the part with no light at all, and they left something there on purpose. That instinct is older than any story we tell about it. The Maya lowered themselves into limestone sinkholes they believed were doorways to the world of the dead, and left offerings in the black water at the bottom. The oracle at Delphi spoke from a cleft in the rock. Mithras was worshipped in chambers built to feel underground, even when they weren't. Almost every culture that left us anything left us a way down, and a story about what waits at the end of it. The stories disagree about almost everything. They agree on one thing. There is more below than the rock itself. Most of us feel that pull and never act on it. We look into the opening and we imagine, and then we go back to our lives above the surface. Richard Shaver did not. He came to believe the feeling was not a mood and not a leftover from some older fear. He believed it was a memory, not of monsters, not of spirits, of a civilization still down there that we had simply forgotten how to remember. To follow Shaver down, you have to go back first, not a few thousand years, much further than that. He asked his readers to imagine the earth before any of the things we use to mark time. Before the cities, before farming, before the cave painters, before the species itself. A world already old, already turning, with no one in it who would recognize us as kin. Into that emptiness, Shaver placed a people. He called them the elder race. In the magazines, they were sometimes called titans, which gives you the scale he meant. They were not our ancestors, in his telling. They were something that came before us and stood far above us. He said their science had gone places ours has not begun to go. They built cities you could lose a modern country inside. Their tunnels ran between those cities under what would one day be oceans. They made machines that could hold a thought the way a page holds a word and hand it back whole 100,000 years later. Their history did not begin in the human past. It ended somewhere in it. If this sounds familiar, that is not an accident. The idea of a golden age that came before us, greater than us, and lost, is one of the oldest ideas people have. Plato wrote down the story of Atlantis 24 centuries ago and said he had it from older men still, who had it from the Egyptians. The occult writers of Shaver's own century had filled the Pacific with a sunken continent they called Mu, and the Indian Ocean with one called Lemuria. Shaver knew those names. His first published piece in 1944 offered the magazine a Lemurian alphabet, a set of ancient letters he claimed to remember. What he did with the old idea was move it. Atlantis sank, Mu sank. The lost golden ages of legend almost always go down under the water where you cannot follow. Shaver's did not go under the sea, it went under the ground. And the ground, unlike the ocean, is still right there, beneath your feet, holding whatever it holds. Which raises the question his whole mystery turns on. If a civilization that vast had truly come and gone before our history began, what would be left of it now? And how deep would you have to go to find it? Something went wrong with the sun. That in Shaver's account is where the change begins. He believed the light of our own star had turned poisonous over the ages, that it carried, in his words, particles of age and death. Slowly the surface became a place his elder race could no longer bear. The world above became dangerous, so the people left it. They did not leave the planet, they went down into it. Picture the size of that decision. Not a family moving house, a civilization deciding that the open sky is no longer survivable and choosing the dark on purpose and beginning to dig. Shaver described enormous works of excavation, chambers cut wide enough to hold the cities they were leaving behind, shafts driven down past the reach of the failing light, whole districts carved out of bedrock to be lived in. The deeper you went, in his telling, the safer you were. So they went deep. Hold the image of the last of them. Caravans moving toward the mountains, away from the daylight, carrying what could be carried. The long files of them passing into tunnel mouths that had been waiting, finished, for exactly this. And then the doors, set into the rock, sized for a people larger than us, closing behind the last of the procession with a sound you would feel in the floor more than hear. A whole population stepping out of the sunlight and not stepping back. Above ground, the centuries did what centuries do. Rain fell, forests grew over the entrances, the roads filled in, the names were forgotten, and then the fact that there had been names was forgotten too. New people came up out of their own beginnings and built new things on the soil, never knowing what the soil was resting on. That, said Shaver, is us. The surface forgot. The world below did not go anywhere. It only closed the door. Now we go in. Slowly. There is no hurry down here and no daylight to lose. Shaver built this place across 30 years of stories and letters. Reading them feels less like an argument than like being walked through somewhere. So we will let him walk us through it. You can decide later what any of it was. The first thing is the size. He did not picture a cave, a room, a few passages, a space you could fill with a shout. He pictured halls the size of weather. You step out of a passage and the wall on your left just keeps going. The ceiling lifts away above the lantern until the light stops finding it. Columns rise out of the floor, climb into the dark, and never come back down. The far wall, if there is one, is minutes of walking away. A cathedral would fit in here the way a chair fits in a cathedral. Bring the light down, and the floor has been made. Cut stone, fitted close, worn smooth down the middle where something passed back and forth for a very long time. It was built for feet larger than yours. The steps are too tall. The doorways are too high. You move through it the way a child moves through a house built for adults, everything quietly telling you it was never meant for you. Keep walking. The floor slopes down, the air turns cooler and wetter, and your footsteps start to carry differently. Then the passage opens and the lantern light runs out across water. An underground lake, black, perfectly still, no wind in the world to move it. The far side is too far for the light. Points of brightness hang here and there across the surface and do not flicker, some on the water, some under it. You cannot tell which. The lake gives the light back doubled. Stone above you, the same stone below you in the water, and for a moment there is no up. These are the places, Shaver said, where the elder race kept their power running. He never explained the lights. He only described them. Now the tunnels. They run out of the great halls in every direction, and they do not behave like caves. They are too straight. A cave wanders because water made it, and water follows the rock. These were driven, dead level, walls smooth, holding their line further than the eye can follow. Shaver believed they were a transit system, routes that ran for hundreds of miles, under the mountains and the seabed, from one buried city to the next. Stand in one and the lantern shows you 50 feet, and then a darkness you somehow know is not a wall, just more tunnel going on under the sleeping country overhead, toward somewhere days away on foot. Off the main ways, the smaller rooms begin. Living quarters, doorway after doorway off the corridors, and inside them the ordinary shapes of a life. Benches, the stone frames where beds had been, niches cut at the height where a person would set something down. A neighborhood, there is no other word for it, street after street of homes, the size of the people who lived in them still written into the furniture, and not one of those people anywhere. Shaver imagined the underworld as a society, not a ruin. Markets, trades, shortages, the small, dull business of keeping a city alive. Walking the empty version is worse than walking through a tomb. A tomb expects you. This place looks like everyone just stepped out. Then a doorway taller than the rest, and beyond it, shelves. An archive, racks climbing into the dark, and on them not books, strips, thin lengths of metal, laid in order, each one holding, Shaver said, a recorded thought. A memory you could play, a day someone lived 10,000 generations ago, pressed into the strip, waiting to be lived again by anyone who knew how to read it. The whole history of the elder world, he believed, was filed in rooms like this one, in the dark, in total silence, unread for longer than our species has existed. And here and there among all of it, the machines, You turn a corner and the lantern finds a shape that is not stone and not furniture. Something engineered, curved housings, fittings, a purpose in every line of it that you cannot read. It is the size of a building. You have no idea what it does or whether it ever stops. Most are dark and cold and have been for ages, and you walk past them the way you would pass a beached ship. Most of them. We have been treating this city as a place that ended. Empty halls, still water, dead machines, a library no one reads. Set the lantern down and listen, the way Shaver said you should. Far off down one of the corridors, under the silence, there is a sound that does not belong in an empty room. It is a hum. Low, even, mechanical. The sound of something that has been running for a very long time and was not built to stop. This is where the underground stops being a ruin and becomes the thing that made Shaver famous. In his account, the elder race left in a hurry, and they did not turn everything off. Some of the machinery is still running. In chambers no one has entered in ages. Lights burn, dials hold a reading, and something draws power off those black legs to do, faithfully, whatever it was last set to do. And the machines he cared about most were not engines or lights or anything that moved a weight. They worked on the mind. He called them rays. In his world, there were machines that could throw a thought from one head into another. Machines that could put a voice in a room with no one speaking. Machines that could press an emotion onto a person from a distance. Fear or calm or pain, the way you would press a key. The best named of them was the tell-log, which an editor's note in 1945 defined plainly as a machine that strengthened telepathic signals. That was the device Shaver said was aimed at him. It is worth knowing where that idea came from, because it is the strangest part of the whole story and the saddest. Shaver worked for a time as a welder in an auto plant in Michigan. And one day, by his account, the welding gun in his hand began to carry voices. He said he could hear, through the machine, the private thoughts of the men working around him. And then more than thoughts. He said he could hear voices in pain, somewhere far below, carried up to him through the equipment. A doctor would have one name for what happened to him in those years. Shaver had another. He decided the voices were real and that he had simply, by accident, tuned a machine to a frequency the rest of us are spared. You do not have to choose tonight which of those it was. The tour does not require it. Whichever story is true, the chamber is the same. A room you were never meant to find, with something in it still running, reaching out along the old channels, doing its work in the dark, whether or not a single mind remains to receive it. The library, you could explain. Stone keeps. A machine that has been talking to itself for 100,000 years is harder to stand next to. The city is not as empty as it looked. Not everyone went back up, and not everything that stayed down here stayed the same. This is the part the magazines loved most and the part we will handle most carefully, because it can turn his quiet, enormous city into a monster story, and the city deserves better than that. His idea was this. When the elder race left, not all of them could leave. Some stayed behind to tend the machines or were simply left, and their descendants went on living down here in the dark for generation after generation, with no sky and no sun and no one above who remembered them. Over that unimaginable stretch of time, he said, they divided. Some of them held on. He called those the Tiros. They kept the old knowledge as best they could. They tended what still ran. In his stories, they are the ones who sometimes tried to send a warning up to the surface, the good neighbors, holding a line against decline in a place that had every reason to decline. And some did not hold on, those he called the Deeros. He blamed the machines, said the same radiation that drove the elders underground had worked on the minds left behind and hollowed them out. On one point he was insistent and corrected his readers about it in print. Not everyone below was a Deero. Most, he said, were not. They were the failure at the bottom of a long fall, not the population of the underworld. We can leave the lore there because the lore is not the haunting part. The haunting part is the simpler thing underneath it. The idea that the city is not empty, that somewhere in the miles of corridor we have been walking there are people, descendants. A line of lives that never once came up into the light, going back further than any family on the surface can trace. You feel it before you see anything. A sound that is not the hum and not the water, a footstep maybe, somewhere off in the dark, going the other way. The lantern at the very end of a long corridor finds something that might be a figure at the edge of the light before it is gone around a turn. A bench that is warmer than the stone around it. A door that was closed when you passed it the first time. Nothing you could prove. Nothing you could take back up with you. Only the growing sense as you stand there that the question you walked in with has quietly changed. You came down here asking what happened to them. You're starting to wonder if you are alone. Every world like this one needs a way in, so where would the doors be? Shaver's answer was the obvious one, which is part of why it works. The entrances are where the rock is already open, cave systems that no one has fully mapped, old mines that go deeper than the ore ever justified, clefts in remote mountains, sinkholes in the desert, the back of some wilderness no road reaches. The places, in other words, where the surface is already thin. He pointed at real ones. He pointed more than once at Devil's Tower. It rises 1,267 feet out of the Wyoming grassland, a flat-topped mass of stone with great vertical columns running up its sides, and it is sacred to many of the native nations who have lived in its site. Geologists will tell you it is igneous rock, cooled and cracked into those columns, then uncovered as the softer land wore away. That is almost certainly what it is. Shaver looked at the same monolith and dared his readers to feel how little that explanation satisfied them, standing in its shadow. He used real places like that, visible, startling, undeniably there, to ask a question the explanation didn't quite close. His supporters did the same across the whole map. They tied his underworld to the temples of Tiwanaku in the high Andes and to the tunnel legends that run through that country. They tied it to the Hal Saflieni Hippogrium in Malta, and that one is worth sitting with because the Hippogrium is real and you can stand in it. It is a temple cut 3 levels down into living rock, by hand, more than 5,000 years ago. No one fully knows why. They folded in the lost city stories of Death Valley and the older treasure legends of the desert, until Shaver's caverns were stitched to half the strange holes in the ground on Earth. None of it was proof. All of it showed how badly people wanted the map to connect. And here is the thing that should give a careful listener pause. Shaver was not the first to draw this map. He was the latest. Long before him, the people of old Ireland spoke of the Sidhe, the hidden ones who lived inside the green mounds and the old hills, in a country laid alongside ours, and who now and then took a person down into it. The same shape of story shows up nearly everywhere. Hollow hills, hidden kingdoms, a door in the mountain that opens one night a year. Travelers and occultists brought back tales of Agartha, a subterranean realm said to lie beneath Asia, linked city to city by tunnels, ruled in secret. The underworld of the dead in 100 traditions reached by a cave, a cleft, a descent. Not one of those is evidence for the others. That is not the point. The point is that the human race has been telling a version of Shaver's story for as long as it has been telling stories at all. A people under the hills, a door in the rock, a world below, close enough to touch, impossible to find. Shaver gave it machines and a pulp magazine and a name. The shape of it was waiting for him, already worn smooth by everyone who had told it before. So many cultures, separated by oceans and centuries, reaching for the same image. A light in the mountain. Come back up for a while, out of the tunnels, into the ordinary light, and back to the man who took us down. When Richard Shaver's first long story ran in 1945, the magazine that printed it expected the usual quiet response. The editor, Ray Palmer, normally got 40 or 50 letters about an issue. After Shaver, he got more than 2,500. They did not all write to say they had enjoyed the story. Many wrote to say they recognized it. They described voices they had heard, places they had felt, things that had happened to them they had never had a frame for until his. Palmer went to Pennsylvania to meet Shaver in person, and came back saying the man was sincere and sane in his judgment, and entirely convinced. By 1947, the magazine put a whole issue under one banner: The Shaver Mystery, the most sensational true story ever told. It is easy now to explain why it caught. The war had just ended. People had spent years being told that secret weapons and hidden enemies and machines beyond imagining were real, because they were. A buried civilization with rays and tunnels did not feel as far-fetched in 1947 as it might have a decade before. And Shaver had written the one sentence that let a reader keep both doors open at once. He said the only way he could tell his story was in the guise of fiction. Read it as a tale and it costs you nothing. Read it as a confession dressed as a tale and it does not let you go. He let you choose, and a great many people chose the second one. But popularity is not why the story has lasted, and not why we came down here tonight. Strip away the rays and the dear-ohs and the magazine covers, and what Shaver was offering was something much simpler and much harder to give up. He was offering the possibility that the world is not finished being discovered. That under the parts we have paved and mapped and named, there is still somewhere we have not been. That history is deeper than the records, and that some of it is keeping. Shaver spent his last years in the Arkansas hills, far from the magazines. He had taken up stones by then, ordinary-looking rocks that he cut open and photographed, convinced that the patterns inside them were pictures, recorded by the elder race and pressed into the rock, waiting to be read. Almost everyone who looked saw only rocks. He saw libraries. He died in 1975, still certain that the ancient world was there in plain sight, and that the rest of us were simply walking past it. You can call that a delusion. Many people did, and they may be right. But there is a version of his certainty that almost everyone carries in some smaller form. The feeling at the mouth of the cave, the pull toward the opening in the ground, the wish that some part of the world is still hidden and still waiting and not yet ours. Shaver just followed his all the way down. So leave us for a moment at the end of one last corridor, deep under a mountain, far past the place where any map still has a line. The walls are ancient cut stone fitted by hands larger than ours, and the dust on the floor has not been touched in so long that the word centuries does not begin to cover it. Somewhere ahead, almost too faint to be sure of, a machine is humming. And further on, past the edge of the lantern, there is a thin line of light. A doorway standing very slightly open. We do not go through it tonight. There is no answer waiting on the other side and no revelation, and Shaver, for all his certainty, never quite reached it either. There is only the feeling that the dark down there is not the end of the world, but the floor of a different one, and that it has been waiting, patiently, under every mountain and every cave and every deep and quiet place, for a very long time. Every opening in the earth asks the same small question of anyone who stops at the edge of it. What if there is more below us than we know?